Like your time is the most valuable thing, and who you choose to spend that time with on your time frame, not dictated by an overlord or a boss or somebody else, is going to be the most precious thing to you. So it doesn't have to be like, oh, well, I'm going to spend time with my daughter, but guess what? We're going to be rolling in my Lambo. It's not about that at all. You know, like I enjoyed golf. I enjoyed, I enjoyed a lot of different things, fishing and racquetball, just like I have many, many different things that I love to do. But in all honesty, those things wouldn't be the same if it weren't for the people that I'm doing those things with, you know? So my value is me choosing to do what I want, where I want, with who I want. And that is the most valuable things to me.
A rational market price for something that is expected to increase in value will already reflect the present value of the expected future increases. In your head, you do a probability estimate balancing the odds that it keeps increasing. Satoshi Nakamoto. Welcome back to What is Your Bitcoin Story, the podcast where we explore the personal journeys of individuals who have discovered and embraced the power of Bitcoin. I'm your host, Gigi, and today I'm thrilled to have Loren HODL joining us on this episode. Our guest today has lived a life full of adventure and exploration, which has undoubtedly shaped his perspective on the world and understanding of Bitcoin. Born and raised in the northern Canada, Loren's upbringing in a Mennonite church and school set the foundation for his quest for truth, love, and connection. His journey took him to the US for college in the 90s, a brief stint in Hawaii, and eventually settling down in California. With a diverse range of career experiences, from professional poker to weed growing, sales, mortgage broking, and teaching, Loren's path has been anything but linear. Each of these experiences has contributed to his growth and understanding of the world, including his appreciation for Bitcoin. Join us as we dive into Loren's fascinating story, from his personal experiences to his take on the revolutionary potential of Bitcoin. You won't want to miss this one, so sit back, relax, and let's start the show. Loren, welcome to the pod.
Hey, man, I really appreciate it. I'm stoked. You had one of my buddies on recently, Eric V. Stacks, and I really got excited about it, but I'm happy to be here, Gigi.
Well, it's my pleasure. And yes, afterwards, we actually spoke a few days ago with Eric, and he said that you're good friends. And he said
Indeed.
that Loren's super pumped. And Eric's also looking forward to listening, as I'm sure other people are, to this Bitcoin story. So let's hit it off with the big question. Where does your Bitcoin story begin, Loren?
Sure. First, I'll just backtrack a little bit, but it's weird to listen to a host give your intro and be like, "Oh, yeah, that's me. My story kicks off. I had a little nephew. I still have him, but he's not little anymore. That was like mining Bitcoin. I'm trying to do quotes here, but the screen's a little small. Anyway, he couldn't explain it to me very well. This would have been probably around 2010 sometime on his little laptop, and it made no sense to me. So I'm one of those people that needs touch points, you know. After that, being in the poker world, I used to play online poker all the time, and we had it was called like Black Thursday or Black Monday, I forgot what it was, where the US government made it illegal for banks to finance and fund our overseas poker sites. And so all my poker buddies were like, hey, there's this thing called Bitcoin. You can get some and we can just, go around the system and fund our sites via Bitcoin. So that was my second touch point. I probably messed around and bought some just to fun, but I had zero idea. And then in 2016, I watched this movie called The Rise and Rise of Bitcoin. For whatever reason, the light bulbs just started going off in my head, and I was like, this really sounds too good to be true. And often in life, probably 99% plus of the time, when something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Probably it is.
But yeah, and I was just thinking about like the 21 million, like that I couldn't get that out of my head. And I'm like, if there's any truth to this, that's fascinating. That's not very many. And if we all agree collectively that as society that we're going to use this thing, this could be huge. And so that's really what pushed me down the journey of the rabbit hole. But I was still extremely fiat minded, where I wanted to make money, not really knowing what money was. But it really, that was it. That my third touch point, that movie, and I was on a quest at that point, and that's probably within a day or two. I was actually purchasing Bitcoin.
Wow, you went straight in. So
Yeah, I did.
what's amazing about your story, Loren, is you have the unconventional, today's Bitcoin story of, oh, I stumbled upon some shit coins in 2017 and it took me
Yeah.
like
Well,
years.
that's
Me
part of my
guilty as
story
well.
too.
Okay. So
Because
those come later down the line.
yes, exactly. Yeah, no, that was definitely part of the walk. But I was Bitcoin at first just because pretty sure that's all there was, because I remember Lightning coming out and then Ether and me jumping on both of those things as well. And then I even had done some, I found some homies to go and talk altcoins with. And so we would go to each other's houses with these different lists. But this was a progressive journey, and it was really and that's why we shouldn't, as a Bitcoin community, chastise people who are on this walk, because I have been there. Like, I was
Of course.
hardcore on Binance trying to buy these little pips and move coins around and buy all these altcoins. I mean, I've owned a lot of altcoins over the years, but it probably wasn't until about 2019 where I
Mhm.
really became convinced that these altcoins weren't where it was at, and it was Bitcoin, and the others were just smoke and mirrors and actually rug pulls. Their altcoins are similar to poker in that that value is actually being extracted from the other players at the table. The house is taking a rake, but in the case
Mm.
of altcoins, the house is going to inevitably just rug pull you anyway, and a ton of that value is just going to be stolen from, Grandma Jones over here, and your buddy who you and he thought were so smart because you got into crisp crunch coin early or whatever it was. So, but it really was a journey, and I've been part of the toxic culture where I was, like, oh, you're a shitcoiner, blah 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 blah. But I'm coming around to the fact that you catch more bees with honey than you do a stick, and so I want to be more receptive
Nice.
in that. I want to treat them in a loving, kind way and accept them and say, hey, maybe help steer them down the right path. And it's I'm against them, don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to change my approach, because I really think I turn a lot of people away, or I have in the past, by being so rude and aggressive in my disdain for what they're doing in the altcoin system. So yeah, it's part of my journey as well as
I,
altcoins, like many people.
I couldn't agree more. If I may just jump in, just to kind of
Please.
reflect on what you said, Lauren. There's two factors in if you do that. The first one, you drive people away from you personally. They think, oh, like,
Yep.
what a jerk that guy is.
Yep.
And the second one is you drive people away from Bitcoin, which is like
For
the
sure.
worst thing that us Bitcoin
Yep.
maxis want to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I
No,
was of the
100%.
same kind of, mindset, like you were. Like, I think a lot of our maxis have been, where it's like, oh, like, have fun staying poor, as you said.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to help these people. So I approach it now totally different in 2024, soon to be
Mm-hmm.
2025, where
Yeah.
I tell people, like, how do you like inflation? Like, how do you like your funds melting away? So I bring up the pain point, and then I bring up Bitcoin as a solution. Whereas before it was, have fun in your shitcoin casino, Bitcoin's
Yep.
king, like, you know what you're talking about. And
Yep.
yeah, like that drives people away. So
It really
it's nice
does.
to see that, we slowly, like, Bitcoin, I say this a lot of times, the deeper you go, the more you study Bitcoin, the more hours that goes into your, no pun intended, proof of work, you
Yep.
become more humble. You want to
Oh,
help
for
other
sure.
people.
Yeah.
But I guess
Yeah.
this has to do with your upbringing and your roots as well, right? As
Yeah,
I mentioned in
absolutely.
the intro.
No, I thought of 45 things, and we'll probably only respond to two, but yeah, no, you just talked about it's a mindset, and it is one of the reasons that we, the early Bitcoin adopters, connect, because our minds think similarly. We're truth
Mm.
seekers. A lot of us have had unique experiences that just made our brains able to comprehend this amazing technology. Uh, Maybe I'll just touch on some of that real quick for me, which you mentioned,
Sure.
the weed growing, the poker playing, and that kind of thing. Like, I don't know if in there it's talked about, how many times I had gone through divorce and stuff, but like these are all tragedies. Divorce is a tragic thing which leaves scars, and it's extremely painful. And I happened to be good at poker and was able to monetize it for myself, but it was also a drug for me where I actually escaped reality. And being raised ultra strict in a Mennonite church, which is super conservative, and really you're in a bubble. You're not aware of what's going on in the outside world. All of these things were formulating my brain and how I thought of the world and how I thought in general. I got into weed through the poker thing because I'd have guys from the East Coast come out to the West Coast, because I played mostly in Vegas, Reno, and California. And after sitting at a poker table next to people for a few hours, you develop some rapport, and they'd say, "Hey, man, I'm actually here looking for a connection because, we can sell this product for $6,000 over there, and over here it's, 3,500 back then, or four or whatever." And I'd go, "Oh yeah, man, I just talked to that guy over there." And then next thing you know, I'm like, "What am I doing? Like, this is like finding $100 bill on the ground."
Business over.
Yeah, like, hey, talk to this guy right here, me, and I'll work myself in. I'll go talk to that guy, and I'll, make a couple $100 on every transaction or whatever, or every pound. And within months, I was going, wait a second, why talk to that guy over there and only make a couple $100 when I can make thousands of dollars every pound? And I'll be that guy. I could fit 40 plants in my backyard. And back then, it was strange in California because you needed well, it's a gray
license.
area. Yeah, if you got a medical subscription, what blah blah prescription, I would really,
but not for 40 plants, right?
Right, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, there was some stretching of the law and stuff, but anyway, that ended up being something that I did for several years. I think a lot of it was part of my journey of, going through that much pain and whatnot. You hit these existential crises. Like, I studied psychology too. I have a 4-year degree in psychology just because I wanted to know why I was here, what, just all the whys and relationships and experiences and hope and purpose and other things that a lot of us Bitcoiners are on the path to discover. And so I would take my drug, which was poker, because I was escaping reality doing that. And then but I had a few wake up moments where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, is this like, would my parents be proud of me right now? Would, the my church that I grew up in, like this isn't who I am. And so I gave up on that. But those things, telling these little background stories to get back to the original point, which is your perspective changes. So not a lot of people have had the good guys, i.e. the police and the government, want what you have and come after you, and also the bad guys. So, with Bitcoin, we get it because at a certain point, we could get a knock on the door here in America from a 3-letter agency. Not only that, we could get a $5 wrench attack because people know, like wearing this swag around town and stuff. They'd be like, hey, you know what? That guy's got some Bitcoin. So like for me, yeah. So for me, in a business where there is some gray areas and maybe even some black market areas, you feel unsafe because you're definitely projecting it out there with the smell and the people you connect with and whatnot. And so you're on the radar there, but you're also on the radar of government agencies. So that's another way when I'm thinking about Bitcoin, my brain just automatically clicked right there where it's like, and I think Eric does everything legitimately and stuff nowadays, and the profit margin for some like crazy grower isn't there in our neck of the woods anymore. But I got out of the game long before that. But it really is a one of those things you talked about where it's like, hey, your brain thinks a certain way, but not the average Joe where I live would ever think about that. They're like, oh no, my money's safe in a bank. It's like, no, you can't just go take 40 grand down to the bank, plunk it down in $100 bills and say, I'd like to deposit this, because they're going to know like, what's going on? They're going to file the paperwork on you. You're going to, so, do crazy stuff like get plastic PVC pipes and put, bundles of cash and Ziploc baggies and bury them in various places. And just like you have to get creative because just at like that time,
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So at that time, I didn't know what Bitcoin was. Bitcoin was probably in its infancy around then, maybe just being born, maybe even that was probably even a couple years before. So anyway, like, to me, Bitcoin would have been a problem solver right there, And
Mm.
also some of my poor choices when it came to marriages. One was like knowing somebody for a extremely short period of time, and having a few beers in Reno kind of thing. When it's like I did lose financially in that situation, and if I had some Bitcoin, that would have actually probably just stayed with me, because it would have been just something that was not known about. Because until I got to know the person, which
Mm.
once I did within a year, then I knew that things were not as they seem. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things that my poor choices and life experiences and good choices and everything, like you said, helped uh, create my brain to really be able to wrap it around Bitcoin and the potential and what it means for, and this goes beyond like doing things that are bad, because that's what, a lot of the politicians here say. It's like, oh yeah, Bitcoin does all these, wrong things. But in actuality, if our freedom is at stake, we will be able to still remain, maintain our sovereignty, and actually be able to take our value and move to a country where they actually, give you personal freedoms and whatnot. So to me, there's so much more to it than just rogue weed money and whatnot. But yeah, it's all part of the story of how my brain kind of was able to grasp these concepts.
Amazing. I guess we'll name this episode Loren's Silk Road Journey.
Yeah, right.
It's
Yeah,
it's
no
it's
kidding.
it's 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 crazy how pre kind of Bitcoin, like you had this issue with what do I do with all this cash, and
Right.
the solution was just there. Uh,
Yeah.
I guess I would say, like, personal feedback. Don't feel bad that you didn't get Bitcoin in 2011, because most people that got in, they either sold it way too early or they just
Mm-hmm.
lost it. I
Yeah.
guess it's in a better position not to have touched it back then than to have
Mm-hmm.
had like 10,000 Bitcoin sitting on some like home hard drive and then
For
like
sure.
losing it or
Right.
forgetting it. I think that would be much more sorer.
Oh, for sure. No, I mentioned my nephew, and he's a guy now who is just like he I've asked him about Bitcoin, and he's kind of just lost. Like he doesn't know what, that, oh, where that laptop that I had, and he'll drop the ball. So I'm kind of like, man, what the heck, buddy? Like
So,
you should have saved your Bitcoin, my man, because he had multiple Bitcoin back then. It's crazy. So yeah, I don't feel
yeah.
quite so bad.
So I guess another topic, like on early, call them early adopters, people that got Bitcoin in the early
Yeah,
days when it was just being like flunked out 50 BTC every 10 minutes with every block, and how many
right.
people were mining. And like people don't realize that like most Bitcoin was mined like in the first decade of Bitcoin being
Mm-hmm.
around, and like how
Yep.
much of it was lost. This estimate of 3 to 4 million Bitcoin, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's very conservative. I think it's like way more millions that have been lost forever. So that makes it that even more scarcer. Like we do talk about 21 million as
Having a
the
glitch in the
total cap
matrix.
supply, but then Satoshi has a million, which will never be moved. And then like
Yeah.
millions, 5+ million has been lost. And now, with the rise of the big Wall Street, the big boys with their ETF games, believe it or
Yeah.
not, was a paper Bitcoin or not. But that's besides the point. They're still gobbling. Like there's crazy demand for
Mm-hmm.
such a scarce asset, and we've only
Yep.
entered the fourth halving. Like the fourth epoch of Bitcoin
Yep.
has only started like 6 months ago,
For
and
sure.
people tend to forget that there is 32 halvings programmed into the Bitcoin protocol. So we're
Yeah.
like not even like 5% into it, and like already
Mm-hmm.
like the demand is crazy. And I think one thing we don't really talk about too much on this pod is the price of Bitcoin, which at the moment sits somewhere around 70,000. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's still super cheap because this asset
Yep.
class is going to overcome everything. It's going to be in the millions of dollars, and people that say like, "Oh, it'll never be," it just depends on the government how quickly they print more money. And I think
Yep.
this can lead into, or did you? I want to swing it back to you, Lauren. Do you have anything else to add from that point in time with the story?
Yeah, I'll just I'm not sure I'm a big fan of where we're leaving it hanging, because it sounds like I'm just a gambling
Okay, yeah,
drug dealing piece of shit. So I'll
of course,
no,
on
I've
the pod.
actually
No,
had
no, no. Sorry.
I've actually had legitimate jobs too. You mentioned them in the thing, but
Yeah.
in the intro, but you mentioned the mortgage business, and I've done some retail management. I sales is
And
actually
teaching.
predominantly. Yeah, I taught for a little bit, a couple years, at a private school in Canada. I went to private school with the church that I was associated with. So,
Mm,
but for the better part of almost 2 decades, sales has been my forte. So I've sold to
okay.
some of the bigger companies in the U.S. actually. So big retail, usually business to business. So I haven't
Mm,
been just a total degen my whole life. I think a lot of the reasons that I actually hit those points was because of traumatic things like divorce and whatnot. And during those phases,
yeah.
um, probably a theme song for my life would have been I Did It My Way by Frank Sinatra, because I really was just doing
Mm,
what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And it was like a lot of poker and just doing what I wanted to do. But so I have not been a total degen my entire life, judging from just the poker and weed story. That was just a little tiny chapter. And thankfully, I have been able to do a ton of different things. I was a mailman. I really have a long list. I've done 20 or 30 different careers. So I've been lucky. So I didn't want to just leave me hanging as this degenerate gambling drug fiend. So, but yeah,
yeah.
going back. So yeah, going back to your point of I think we're at a phase right now in Bitcoin where maybe it was like the gold rush out here in the West in the United States back in 1849, where you can walk around on the creeks and just pick the nuggets right up. And like you
Mm,
said, we're like 70,000, 100,000, 200, 400, 5. They're all going to be cheap numbers because it's still going to be like picking
mm,
nuggets up off of the ground. We're actually going to get into probably sooner than later an era where it's not like you're going to be able to just buy Bitcoin for the average person. And we're going to actually be, I'm really a subscriber to Bob Burnett's theory of, block size is going to be the thing, because it's like, yeah, there'll be
mm,
Bitcoin underneath, but who's going to be able to move them? Because there's only X number of transactions, there's only X number of block space available that we can actually do these things. So there'll probably be quite a hash war, and it'll probably be more than just miners. So right now in 1849, boys and girls, you need to pick those nuggets up off the ground because things are changing, and the whole narrative is going to change. So I'm right there with you on like, hey, these are cheap sats. Get them while you can. Sorry, I was trying to
no,
marry
for
those two
sure. And
things together because we left me hanging as a
was a
degenerate,
nice
and then
transit.
yeah,
No,
I tried my
not at
best.
all. I jumped with my commentary and kind of just slushed you off right
No,
there. I will
it's
circle
okay.
back to that, but I just wanted to mention like another thing that for the listeners, no matter at what price you buy Bitcoin, you will always think it's expensive. Like I've
For
had
sure.
guests on this show that were
Yep.
buying Bitcoin for $100, and they were like, "What was I doing? Like $100? I can I can take my wife out for like a
Yeah.
very nice steak."
Yep.
And I'm buying some, digital token. And yeah,
Exactly.
and like people today are like, wow, it's 70,000. But like,
Yeah.
when Bitcoin's like 2.4 mil, then it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
70,000. Why was
Yeah.
I an idiot and didn't buy it then? Kind of that
I
mindset.
can even add color to that because when you do go through divorces, it actually devastates you financially. So you lose half of your shit and then
Mm,
half your shit again. And then
yeah.
by the whatever time you're like, hey, I don't really have that much stuff to lose anymore. So why not? Let's do it again. But um, I
You
do
go through a
recall,
halving cycle, right,
yeah,
Loren?
that's the opposite halving cycle. Yes, exactly. Different kind of halving cycle, not the good kind. But anyway, like during those kind of times in I actually, probably 2017, 18, somewhere in that range, maybe even a little bit earlier. You could actually
Mm,
use a credit card on Coinbase. I haven't used Coinbase in years, and I'm not a fan of theirs, so I'm not endorsing them. But you could, and I was pretty poor, so I would leverage it. I would just max that baby out, and thankfully, I caught things like that $17,000 bloop. But to me, it was like, man, I could buy this, and I could take this trip, and I could, So I was thinking like that, and luckily, I was cashing out before the big. But it was all
mm,
because I was counting everything in fiat, and also thinking like, man, $900, this is expensive. So I totally understand that, especially when finances are tight, and you're thinking
yeah.
like, how many you know corn dogs could I buy with this money, and I could pay my bills and blah 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 blah. So 100% right. I remember just stressing about $900 Bitcoin, $1,200 Bitcoin, and just going, okay, I hope this is the right thing. And that was before, like, my conviction is like turned more into an obsession at this point, and so I'm not. It's laughable almost, looking back, and I think we'll also do that with this period. We'll laugh like, ha ha ha. Remember when we were stressing out about $70,000 Bitcoin? It'll be the same thing, just a different day.
We will be remembering the 58K gang. Rest in peace, 58K
Yeah.
gang.
R.I.P. boys
The
and girls.
58K gang is gonna add another zero. It's gonna be the 580K gang.
Yeah,
They're gonna make a return.
Just a matter of time. Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
So Loren, I want to go back to your journey. As you said, you worked like nearly 2 decades in sales. How has learning about Bitcoin impacted your journey and your profession as sales? Did it have anything to do? What was it? In any way, shape, or form involved with Bitcoin? Were you evangelizing Bitcoin to your B2B partners, or it was a separate life?
Yeah, it was a separate life, and I actually think it will evolve into being the opposite, where everything that I've learned about people, hopefully, I'll be able to use in a positive way to evangelize for Bitcoin. Both my training, both being raised in a church where you see things a very distinct way, and you're in a bubble, to my search and existential crisis about trying to find peace from within myself, and then learning about people in sales. I did a whole bunch of different wholesale events where I would travel around to different cities and in the US and do these trade shows. And you just meet thousands of different people. And then I'd also do direct sales where I would go, like Target was one of my customers that I had to actually get through the gatekeeper, find the right buyer, pitch the product, and I got 12 products in all the Target stores across the country. So like things like that. And so you learn a set of skills in order to achieve that goal. And in doing so, you learn a lot about people, So I probably have used those things in bad ways and going through hard times because another thing I did was use like alcohol and women to as another one of those vices that I was talking about, poker, when I was in bad ways. And so it felt bad because it felt like I could use those skills but then to manipulate another human, which I'm not interested in, and I'm not the kind of person that would write a brag book on anything like that. But it was just where I was at the time. I was hurting, and I just was looking for connection and looking for reality and to truly be loved, and things that a lot of other people are actually seeking. A lot of people in the Bitcoin community, I hear the same things. I want truth, I want hope, I want purpose, I want all of these connecting things. But everything that I tried, I was just not feeling that. Like I had an itch that needed to be scratched, and nothing I was trying, none of my careers, nothing that I was doing, and feeling of hopelessness, which you do see in especially our country. I don't know what you see there. Sounds a lot different, but like I live fairly close to Sacramento and San Francisco, and when you go walk the streets there, you see the opposite of that. You see the lack of all of those things, and so I have walked in desolate places. I have walked in places where I've experienced immense pain and felt like nobody cared about me and whatnot, and I in turn probably hurt other people just because I was in such misery that I was unaware of what I was doing. But it's kind of it's another thing that I think the tool that is Bitcoin can help people, because to me Bitcoin isn't the god, and it's not the end all be all. It's just a tool, and it's not out of the woods yet. It's not something that's been refined and nobody can stop, and there's it's error free or anything else. It's just, it gives me hope because it is a shot, and the only shot that I see at actually taking the monetary system back, which would be the foundation at which we could make these other changes. So to me, it's like we sometimes worship Bitcoin, but actually Bitcoin is just a small tool to help freedom and help truth and help love and help all these things that we need to see in society. So I'll get off my soapbox because I don't remember where I started, and I think I might have gotten down a little rabbit hole there.
No, you brought up some good points, and you actually mentioned that one word that I wanted to bring up through your journey of having vices, through the poker, the women, the alcohol. You were just searching for freedom, and you finally found your freedom. And it's in none of those vices. It's in a digital protocol, which is the most beautiful thing. Which doesn't hurt anyone.
No.
Go ahead.
I think that I think I had the ability. I think I had the cognitive wherewithal to accomplish a lot right out of college. I think I could have been a doctor. I think I could have done a lot of things, but I think my core essence was finding love and to feel uh, connections. And so I think that my journey was mostly fueled by those. And I think
Mm.
I used to think 90+% of people were wonderful and great and everything else. And then through my journeys, I actually flip flopped that, where I was like, man, I think 80% of people are just assholes. I'm a little bit in the middle right now. I don't, I don't think that anymore. But having the to seek to be loved for truly who you are and for no ulterior reason, and to find that connection was always something that motivated me. And when I failed at it, I still wanted to keep going. And not all of my, I talked about womanizing. It wasn't all just, in fact, I would say more of it was feeling a special connection with another human. Being here at the same time on
Mm.
a planet and just crossing paths is a miracle in and of itself. And then to connect with someone on a deeper
Flying through
level, like,
space.
yeah, exactly, just on this little pin. And we can only inhabit,
This
like,
bubble, yeah.
a 20-mile radius around the just this crust of it. Like, it's mind-boggling when you really go deep enough on it. So
Mm.
to me, there's meaning, and like these connections also impacted who I am today, and there was meaning. So I don't want to just sound like some jerk in that regard either, and I don't want to leave that story hanging there. But that search for connection was probably a number one driver, and the ability to, I don't know, it seems like life is this continuum where it's like good and evil on sides of each side of the continuum. And when I
Mm.
make more choices on the side of good, I actually am rewarded with happiness more than when I'm on the other side, regardless of what I was taught, which is if you bang the chick with fake boobs with long hair extensions and drive a Lambo and do all these things, that will make you happy. And when I have done those things, it has not made me happy. It's done the reverse. And so now when I'm saying, like, hey,
Mm.
I want people to find that purpose, I want people to find the hope, I want people to feel genuinely loved just because someone out of free will loves you for who you are, like, that's quite a special thing. And that's something that I think I finally found after 5 times. So we've been together for like 8 years. So, like, that feels great. Like, when we met, I had nothing. Well, I had a little something, but she had about negative what I had. So together we evened out, and she, there was no other reason to to really like me, like, not financially, not career wise, not, I was already starting to look like shit in my 40s. So I mean, it feels good to just be loved for no other reason than who you are. And so, like, in that regard, I feel fulfilled to walk life with a partner that is in this thing for the right reasons. And I think that's an amazing thing that
Mm.
to me has always been worth more than a career. So I think that's what motivated me in that direction. And that is another thing to tie it back into Bitcoin, which is it gives me hope that people will be able to find out in life what drives them. We're not all here to go to college. We're not all here to be engineers. We're not all here to do that. Like, some people truly are fulfilled doing things like picking vegetables or doing other things. Like, it's not, and yet our system currently is, the
100%.
incentives are so misaligned that people can't find their purpose and they want to escape their reality. And I think that's why when I walk down the streets of San Francisco or Sacramento or LA, you can see it in their faces. They're escaping reality through drugs and through other vices, and it's not a great place for society. And I think if we as a humanity want to succeed and want to prosper, we need to change it. And the only way that I see is Bitcoin, because everything else, like the political system, isn't going to change it. All of our other systems, at least in America, are falling apart. So I mean, you could name any. Our legal system's in disarray. Our education system is shit here. Like, we're not succeeding. We're falling apart. We're
What
failing.
about the
And
medical system where you can't
God,
afford
don't even
to
get me
have like
started
a
on the
heart
medical
surgery or
system.
anything?
No, the medical system is
Insane,
beyond
which should be
broken.
like
Yeah,
a human right. Like, you're feeling bad, you
right.
need to get
Yeah,
help. But no, it's
yeah. I was
sir,
a member
pay
of a
this ten
gym for.
thousand dollar bill, please.
Exactly. No, that goes right back down to misaligned incentives and corrupted monies. Like, the incentive in our medical system is not, hey, what's in the best interest of this person's care? What will heal him? What will make him better? It's
Mm.
actually the opposite. How can we make money off of this person? And it's like, it's all about the almighty dollar and the bottom line and our shareholders. And like our country pushes these drugs on television. I played racquetball for years and was a member of this gym and played with a lot of doctors, and a lot of them were just ending their practices and just walking away just because of the corruption in the system. They were just like, I can't do this anymore. This is insane. So it's really sad because it's denigrated quickly,
Yeah, it's to jump in there, like it's sad to see like that we have today so much potential. Like I truly believe we do live in the most powerful time in human history ever through the power of internet, and now of course with Bitcoin. You can be sitting out in Fiji, eating out of your berry garden and be selling something to someone in Sacramento, in London, in Paris. Like you have access to the whole world from your palm, literally in a supercomputer called a smartphone. Yet there's people escaping the reality and misery through, methanol and like alcohol and like so many like antidepressant drugs, which is, I wouldn't say crazy, like, but it's sad that I would name it that way. Like that people are losing so much potential and they're kind of like, oh, the world is falling apart. And, a lot of time with older generations, especially with grandparents, I hear that a lot. They say, oh, like, we feel sorry for you, Gigi, like, life is just not what it used to be like. And I like to, swing the table around and say, well, it's down to how you look at the situation. You can sit down and say, oh, well, I don't have such a nice car as my neighbor. Like, why am I not making X amount of money every month? Or you can do something about it. There's two things you can do in life. You can do words, which are very hollow, or you can do actions. And swinging back to politics, the politicians like to say a lot of things, but then they don't do too much actions, right? And in your personal life, maybe you should speak a little bit less and do a little bit more action, and your life is going to turn around. And it's insane how quickly that can happen. You're a living example, Loren. Like how many like things you've done in your life, and you're only like kind of like midway through your life. Let's say in your 50s. It's fascinating. Like you're such an inspiration. Should be to people where if something. I tweeted up the numbers a little bit. I leveraged them.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off the rails.
Just to tell people, no, of course, and just to tell people, 1% improvement every day. The compounding of percentages is mind-boggling. Most people don't realize the power of compounding. And if you improve every day by just 1%, forget 10%, 1%, do something better every day. Be a better human. Do your job better. Start a business today. It's so easy. You don't even need like. Forget brick and mortar, but like you don't even need a website. You can do like lousy Instagram page and start selling your product or your service. And if it's the right service or right product, it's in 1 year's time you're going to be in a whole different world. And people just I feel, I don't know, is it laziness? Is it brainwashing? Is it influence? Like what is it that's driving people down the wrong route? What do you think that is, Loren?
That's a great question. I'll add to your point first. I experienced I'll just label it generically abuse as a child, and it really goes to exactly what you said, and also the things that have happened in my life as far as poor me. Like, oh, she did this, or oh, I was hurt. You can actually use those things as a crutch and try to get sympathy and not and just stay laying down and just stay in the question we're trying to answer, which is why. Or you can actually say, I'm going to allow this difficult situation to make me stronger and make me a better person. And I hope that I do that on a daily basis, because there are times when I've definitely laid down and felt sorry for myself and wanted sympathy from others. But I think that just getting the message out there and just saying, hey, don't be a victim, and don't be, feel sorry for yourself and make the world all about you. Freedom is tied with personal responsibility and accountability. You need to be accountable for yourself. You need to be responsible. To answer your question directly, I would say that it's probably societal, where the message is like, you're a victim. There's so many enablers out there. There's so many handouts. And these are actually creating more bondage and less freedom, because it's actually stripping away people's personal responsibility. So it's a narrative that's being just throughout society, through our education system, through media, through all of these different outlets, through a lot of these social programs, through psychology, unfortunately, where it's like, oh, poor you. Yep, you just need to lay on this couch and then we'll take care of you, give you these pills and everything will be fine. Like the message is wrong. It's not a message of, okay, hey, stand up, knock the dirt off and be responsible, because that in that way you will find happiness and you'll find the freedom that you're looking for, not by being a victim and expecting handouts and playing the poor me card. So I don't know if I've got it all figured out, but that's my theory.
No, I like it. And this ties really nicely with Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins, where
Yeah,
you have to be responsible. If
for
you're not
sure. Yes,
responsible, well, all of that is gone. So I
100%.
think this is another reason why Bitcoin is making, people better, because it does teach you to be more disciplined and
Hmm.
taking control into your hands,
Yep.
and being responsible for what you do. And that goes from the nutrition that you put in your body, the
Yep.
spending habits, living your life, living larger than life, right? Like
Yeah,
maxing out, as you said, the credit card, which is I hear a very popular trend in the US, having multiple
seems to
credit
be.
cards,
Yeah.
just maxing them out to the max. In Europe, like we don't, like where I spend most of my life, like nobody really maxes out, like has like 5 credit cards and like maxes
Yeah.
them out all the time. It's kind of more conservative on the spending. But then when you leap into Bitcoin and start living on a Bitcoin standard, uh, wowzers, like your spending habits change drastically. And that
Yeah.
even helps enlarge the earth, right? Because you're not
Yep.
buying a bunch of, cheap plastic crap.
Right.
And polluting the world with the efforts that you're doing. And more importantly, you're giving away your energy through the dollars, the
Hmm.
pounds, the Japanese yen, whatever you're earning,
For sure.
into worthless things that don't mean nothing. But in a consumerism world where it's all about have the next thing, there's this new model, like this epidemic of new year, new product, especially with iPhones. Like everybody goes crazy every September. Woo! Like iPhone 25
Hmm.
has come out, and it's got
Yeah.
an 0.5 millimeters thinner, and people are
Hmm.
actually, I was going to say, lining up. I don't really see people lining up anymore. I guess
They're
people are
too
getting
poor.
squeezed to
Yep.
line up for iPhones. But just as an example, like these new things rolling out every year, it's like it's unethical, and you
Yep.
can't be rolling it out forever. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, you're
I guess
100% right.
Bitcoin is fixing a lot of things.
And that's why I think the message that I want to portray to the world, to a lot of these people, isn't one of scorn necessarily, but love and acceptance and saying, hey, come to this side. I mean, I don't know if it was before we started recording or not, but we were talking about, like eating red meat and doing all these, no seed oils and all this different
Mm.
stuff. And I really wanted to change the tune from the message of the actual, current Bitcoin community of saying like, hey, in order to be part of the cool kid club, you need to do these things, to like, hey, to be a Bitcoiner, you need to use Bitcoin. But along the way, you'll discover these things because you're actually seeking this stuff. You're seeking truth. You're seeking like, hey,
Mm.
when I become financially sovereign, I do want my life to extend. What can I do to, extend my life, because I want to live and hopefully to my 100. Like, so a lot of these things, I'm not
Yeah.
anti. I am a meat eater. I think red meat is the one superfood, and I'm all about it, but I'm also all about trying to bring more people into the flock and not alienate and exclude them. I'm pretty sure maybe it was before we hit record we were actually going over that stuff. But yeah, I 100% agree with all the things that you're saying there, and I think it's part of the journey, because it's not that, like they say, Bitcoin changes you. You're actually changing yourself, but you're doing it because of the tool of Bitcoin,
Mm.
because you're getting these realizations in your head of like, oh wow. Oftentimes we don't even think about longevity because we're just so stuck on like, okay, how am I going to pay my daycare bill, or whatever you
You're on
call
the
it over there.
hamster wheel, just living
Yeah, yeah, you
day
are.
by
You're in a
day.
rat race, and you're just, oh, I got to pay this bill. I got to do this thing. I got to drop off the kids. I got to, and it's just like your life is just shortened just by the amount of anxiety and everything that you're going through. But then as you just slow it down, that's why in
Mm,
Bitcoin they talk a lot about time preference and how just kind of you operate in slow
yeah.
motion almost. And when you are in that mode, you do think about those other things. You do think about health and where you want to live and how you want to live that life. And so these things will just automatically be part of your journey. And so I don't want to exclude anyone out of partaking in this wonderful life by telling them, like, if you have fun staying poor and eat meat and don't eat seed oils, or you're not part of the cool kid club. So I just wanted to slide that in there just in case we
Yeah.
didn't go there earlier, because I think we talked about it, but I don't remember if it was recorded or not.
I think it was in the beginning, but nonetheless, I mean that's an important point to
I
bring
think
across,
so.
and especially to the new listeners, because I
Yeah,
like to to focus this pod as well to newcomers. And my orange
absolutely.
pilling way is I tell them, oh, by the way, like if you don't believe what I'm telling you, you can always check out this pod called What's Your Bitcoin Story.
Yep.
Fantastic host, has great conversations. And I try to like shuffle them through to listen to how Bitcoin
Yeah.
is actually helping
Hmm.
your life. It's not about numbers go up on the screen.
Right.
It's changing the mindset, changing your lifestyle. And
Yep.
you brought up a super important point, which I'd like to tap into, which is time, right? The
Yes.
most precious asset that we all have, and we all share
100%.
at the same
Yep.
time. No matter if you're Michael Sater or Loren HODL, we all
Hmm.
have 24 hours in the
Yep.
day, 365 days a year.
Yep.
And Bitcoin actually gives you the freedom to spend your time how you want to do it. And I think if we're talking about freedom, that's the biggest freedom. Like the reason I'm
Hmm.
doing this and the reason I'm stacking like a maniac is because most listeners know I have two young small beautiful daughters, and I don't want to be working two fiat mines for the rest of their upbringing. Like I'm doing this next
Yeah.
12, 24 months, if not
Hmm.
sooner. And I death kiss goodbye the fiat world,
Yep.
and I go full time into rolling out Bitcoin content and just spending
Yes.
my time with my wife and my kids,
Yeah.
traveling the
That
world, what
sounds
I want to
amazing.
do,
Yeah.
and really taking advantage of every moment, which you're never going
Yes.
to get back. And
Nope.
there's a new quote that I use a lot. I had a guest a few episodes ago who goes by the name of Sovereign Origin, who I met in
Mm.
Prague this summer,
Oh yeah.
and he imprinted that quote into my head, saying it's not about stack sats, stay humble, is stack sats, stack time. The more sats you
Yes.
have, the more time you get. And
100%.
that resonated with me super strongly.
Hmm.
And my kind of message that I want to get across to people is make the most of your time,
Yes.
and
Yep.
every day has 24 hours. Yeah, they go by very fast, but if you use your time wise and you enjoy every moment, oh
Yep.
my, like that time is well spent. You don't want to
For
be
sure.
doing this, as you mentioned, Lauren, oh, I got to jump here. I've got this meeting. I'm
Hmm.
jumping on this call.
Yep.
It's not a healthy place to be. And as a, human creatures, we used to be chimpanzees a few thousand years ago. We're not made to be on a Zoom call writing out papers,
Hmm.
taking a dump, driving a car. Like it's
Yeah.
insane, like how much stuff is going. And this is every day. This is not like a once
Yep.
off. Oh, we're like jump into this wild and then it's every day. So no wonder people are like schizophrenic, losing their shit, looking for escape, as you said. May that be
Yep.
drugs, alcohol, whatever. Like it makes
Yeah.
sense why people are doing it. And
For sure.
Bitcoin just like pulls all that away. It flips the chessboard on its head and it kind of
Yeah.
resets your life preferences. So I mean, I can't say it enough. Like Bitcoin is, the most sovereign thing you can do today in this chaotic world that we live in.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not going to dabble myself more into it, but I just kind of wanted to bring up the aspect of time, which is the
For
most
sure.
important thing.
Yeah. Maybe just piggybacking on that, value, value is
Mm,
it's like, I've listened to a lot of podcasts and a lot of Bitcoin folk, a lot of TradFi people talk about value. And it seems like there's different kinds of value. There's a value that is what I perceive and what you perceive, like tastes and
perceived
food,
value,
and
yeah.
yeah. And then there's like the collective, which is like gold actually became valuable because the collective will of the people decided that it would, over years, and that's Bitcoin's in the process right now of having the collective will of the people. And every day that goes by, it seems like that value is actually growing. And it seems like every day that goes by that we people who believe in Bitcoin are right, and that people will adopt Bitcoin in a large way so that it can't be messed with anymore by government entities or otherwise. So when I started my journey, I measured value in US dollars. And Bitcoin to me was almost like the career test that you take where you're given the sheet and just saying, uh, what is your dream job? What would you be doing if there was no holes barred and you had unlimited resources and money? Um, Bitcoin is that, but you actually believe it. You actually go, holy shit, I could be flying to the Mediterranean and doing all these different things. But then, really, when you go through all that and you've gone to the Mediterranean enough times and you've sipped enough drinks with fancy umbrellas on beaches and you've done all that, you'll actually still not be rewarded, you know? So you'll actually keep
Sure.
going down the value rabbit hole where you just realize, like, hey, the things that you just talked about, like your time is the most valuable thing, and who you choose to spend that time with
Mm,
on your time frame, not dictated by an overlord
mm,
or a boss or somebody else, is going to be the most precious thing to you. So it doesn't have to be like, oh well, I'm going to spend time with my daughter, but guess what, we're going to be rolling in my Lambo. It's not about that at all, you know. Like, I enjoyed golf, I enjoyed
sure.
I enjoyed a lot of different things, fishing and racquetball, just like I have many, many different things that I love to do. But in all honesty, those things wouldn't be the same if it weren't for the people that I'm doing those things with. You know, maybe that's not the same for everybody, but for me,
100%.
my value lies in those things. And that's what I want to be spending my time doing. So my value is me choosing to do what I want, where I want, with who I want, and that is the most valuable things to me. And when I can do that in a way where I'm doing those things with my family, but I also want to be giving back. So I want to spend, 10 or 20% of my time in the future giving back, like you're saying, like making content for other people so that you can grab them by the hand and show them the
Mm.
way and say, hey, look it, there is a better way, and it's not being chasing this fiat monster that's continually debasing you and stealing your wealth and stealing your value. So I'm right there with you. Maybe just stating the same thing a different way, but I'm 100% in agreement with your time and your value.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of what I took away from what you just said, Lauren, with, you know, value. Actually, the real value is priceless. The things that you mentioned,
Yes.
going out
Yep.
fishing,
Yep.
going out to the park, those things are free and they're
Yep.
available and accessible to everyone. And nobody
Right.
does them. Everybody's chasing the fancy Lambo, the big
Yep.
mansion with 18 bedrooms and 20 bathrooms. But that
Yes.
brings you no happiness. That brings you actually more
No.
problems. Like I hear a lot of people, and I know some people that made a very nice, decent amount of money in their short life, and they're like,
Hmm.
holy shit, like I don't know what to do with this money, especially in the
Hmm.
current economic stage where you can't just keep
Right.
that money, these millions in the bank, and then you're
Yep.
like, I've got everything, and then you're even stressing even more. So like I feel like people are all looking to become these fiat millionaires, but they have no idea that if you do become a fiat
Yep.
millionaire, it's even worse because then you're like, how do
Yeah.
I preserve this? And if
Yep.
you don't see down the orange tunnel, oh my God, it's a fucked up place to be. I'd rather be a junkie than a millionaire, because
Well,
at least the
yeah,
junkie can escape and enjoy his time. But
you're
like,
100% correct. Well,
having all these resources, it's
you
crazy.
talked about like freedom, and it's funny you should say so, because when you're living in more oppressed places or states or countries, those freedoms,
Yeah.
even the stuff that was, there was that old saying, I don't know if it was in Europe or not, but the best things in life are free. That was
Mm.
true, but now they want to regulate and charge you for everything. So even fishing, they're going to charge you a fishing license. They're going to charge you to dock your boat. They're going to charge you for all these things. So a
Oh,
lot of these
really?
things, oh yeah, are being regulated by overzealous governors and governments and stuff around the world, and especially in the U.S. and particularly in states like California. But things you're mentioning are ways to escape that repression and whatnot. And we talked about the election earlier, and it's a big day for us here in America. So I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that, but
It is.
as far as I'm
Yes, that was
concerned,
coming up.
oh, good. As far as I'm concerned, this is where, and I think maybe we alluded to this before we hit record as well, is this plays into the same thing as the Bitcoin community kind of putting peer pressure on other Bitcoin members to, like, hey, we don't need to vote, Bitcoin will fix it. But I'm of the opinion that, hey, if we're supporting freedom and Bitcoin is a freedom tool, then we should give people the freedom to choose to vote or not to vote. And so I support both of those groups. I happen to be in the group of I really think that this election is super important. And I mentioned I was on a space with Fred Krueger before this. I've been helping him out, co-hosting some of his spaces and whatnot. But I actually wrote down some stuff because some of the folks talking were talking about things that are really impactful, not just to Bitcoin, but also to our lives here in America. Some of them are choke point 3.0, which is a way that they're trying to choke out, similar to what I mentioned earlier about the funding of poker sites that I used to play on. They're trying to choke out financial institutions from being able to actually fund and get and bring value out of the traditional fiat system here in America and roll it into Bitcoin. So there's the choke point 2.0 that would be an issue. Something that I mentioned, which was lawfare, where they're actually weaponizing the legal system and going after particular people, people that want a free Ross, free speech, freedom of speech would be under attack. I think the X platform would be under attack. There's abortion. We have a problem with illegal folks crossing the border. There's a legal way to do that. And now we have millions of people in the country. And ultimately, we could end up with a one-party system in the US. So these are all reasons that I think that I want to vote. And that's not to say I really think Bitcoin would be in a better place by supporting one person. I hope that the community doesn't crucify me for this, because I know a lot of people want to just, exercise their right to not vote. And I appreciate and respect your opinion. I just want the same in return. And I think that our message would be a lot more well received to outsiders if we had more of this kind of acceptance. I know there's a line somewhere, but I don't think voting is it, or eating red meat, or whatever it is. I don't think those are lines where we should say, no, sorry, you can't be part of the cool kid club. So to me, I'm on pins and needles right now. Like, I'm going to be going in and watching some election results and stuff, because I really do think that this is a turning point. So sorry guys, if if you're one of the ones that are like, no, I'm not gonna vote. I respect it and support it because it's freedom, but I'm in the other camp, and I hope you respect and support me back.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's impossible to be recording this episode of November 5th on election day and not talk about the big elephant in the room. I guess,
Yep.
Twitter has been, and not just Twitter, like all media has been, no matter what website you open up, it's filled legacy or DeFi. Everything is just about the election, and there's like
Yep.
gazillions meme coins and all this going on. But I want to kind of give my comment that I fully agree with you, Loren. Bitcoin is freedom and uncensorable mindset. So who am I to tell people what to do? Don't go out and vote, or vote for this party, vote for that party. At the end of the day, Bitcoin gives you the freedom to make your own choice.
For
And,
sure.
we shouldn't be censoring nothing, just like we
Yeah.
see in Bitcoin, with the whole ordinals. To me personally, I think it's absolute shit. But who am I? I would never, if I could vote to
Yeah.
block them, censor them.
For
Because if you
sure.
censor that, then what happens to be that other things can be censored. So really
Can
going
I
back to circling to freedom, people should be free to make their choice. Go ahead,
can
Lauren.
I caveat the thing that I said about voting
Yeah,
too
for
is,
sure.
it's not that I believe in the system. It's not that I believe that politics will fix itself. I do believe that Bitcoin will be the only way, or the only tool that I see available to actually give this a shot of actually reforming things like politics. So I'm not advocating for the political system being where it's at to fix the problem
The
it's
solution to
at. So
everything.
yeah, exactly. So I'm not saying that at all. So I didn't want to come across as a simp for the current system. That's not where I'm coming at. I'm just saying, like, hey, let's change the messaging of, like, no, F you can't vote if you want to be part of this organization or part of this human Bitcoin network that we have. So I'm just wanted to make sure that we got that cleared up, because I kind of left it
Clear the
maybe,
waters.
yeah, seeming like I was just all political, and that's not it at all. I actually think Bitcoin's going to do its thing regardless of who is elected. But I'm
Yeah.
of the opinion that maybe we kind of went over my age, and I really would love to see Bitcoin become a standard in a handful of countries in my lifetime, and I think the path that would lead there the quickest is through, one administration more so than the other. I think the other may actually do the opposite and hold it back a little longer. So, I mean, to me, that's just another reason. And I really think it doesn't matter in the long term, but maybe in the short term, maybe in like 3 to 5 years or a shorter amount of time. But in the long term, Bitcoin doesn't give a shit. It's just going to do its thing. So I did want to get that caveat in there too before we go too far off on a tangent, just because I kind of seemed like I was sympathizing for the current system or something, which I am not.
Don't worry, Loren. This is not CNN. We're not gonna cut
Yeah, and
separate
just do that
things
one.
and
Yeah.
frame it in a different way.
Loren likes the current system.
Loren's voted.
He's not a Bitcoiner. Yeah. Yeah,
That's right.
exactly.
So no, I think you cleared that out and you made a very balanced take of it, and I think
Okay.
it's important to mention these things because a lot of times, in the Bitcoin space, like it does feel like some people are very pushy to a certain side, may that be
Yes.
politics or nutrition or wellness or whatever. It's all
Right.
about, hey, you're not doing 100 push-ups a day. Like, what are you doing? You're weak.
Mhm.
Like, that's not
Yeah.
the way to go to it. I mean, not everyone
Yeah.
has to do 100 push-ups a day, and you should
No,
be
but
free to
God
do
bless
it.
them.
But I
Yeah.
wanted to.
I cheer those people on,
True.
and I support them, and I can't do 100 push-ups. But anyway, yes, I agree. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
No, so I was gonna say I wanted to retrack a little bit to a few things you mentioned before bringing up the big election day, which was kind of regulations and this whole taxation and everything, and makes it sound very communist-like to me. And as some of the
Yes.
listeners know, I do live in an ex-communist country, and like over here, like I feel much more freer than in Europe. And well, I've never lived in the US, but from from what I hear, it's it sounds very much like more like dictatorship, where it's
Yeah.
the other way around, saying, oh, those the Putin's the dictator, the Xi Jinping is the dictator, Iran's dictator. But like, well, I don't know for those countries, but I'll speak on behalf of Russia. Like, life is pretty free. You can do whatever
Yeah.
you want. And like talking about safety, which I think should be a number one priority for any government.
For sure.
Maybe people will take it out of context what's happening on the border, but I'm talking about like every day living in the city. I feel much freer here with my children. In Europe, there's so much crime going on, and I know in the US as well.
Yep.
And like, there's things. It's once again media and propaganda, right? Which I think we spoke about this, Loren, off the record. Propaganda plays a big role in shaping society and funneling, misinformation for their own agenda. And it's interesting how just in a span of 30 years, things are, kind of, they switched around. Like these countries that was propaganda as, the devils of the earth are, people are much happier and living much freer lives. And, the free countries of the world are suddenly becoming these, like draconian cabals, which are telling you, where you can fish. Did you pay your tax? Did you not?
Yep.
Which is crazy. And that's just in 30 years. So going back now forward to your point of seeing a Bitcoin standard in your life, Loren, I think you will see a Bitcoin standard, maybe not globally, but in a lot of countries, because maybe not in 3 and 4 years, but like, as I said, what's been done in just like 2-3 decades, like I think, and the way Bitcoin is going on the trajectory, it's only a matter of time until governments start mining. And there's a lot of rumors, I go by, I don't trust, I verify. I can't verify that the UAE is mining. I can't verify that, the Argentinian government is mining. But like, if there is some truth in it, then holy shit, like very big, powerful countries are already doing it. And what do you think the smaller countries will do? They will have no choice. It's either join them or die. So, I think sooner or later, Bitcoin's going to play a huge pivotal role, and especially getting rid of, the debt problems of nation states. There is no better way than, mining Bitcoin through the natural resources that you have. And going back to, I hate when still people today say like, oh, but Bitcoin's bad for the planet, right, Gigi? Like it's burning so much energy. I go, guys, Bitcoin mining does not burn energy. It transforms electricity into the hardest asset that's ever lived, and you can transport it anywhere, which people have this aha moment, like, holy shit, like that, that solar panel on your roof just facilitates power in your house, but you can't send, the wattages from your solar to someone across the Atlantic, right? But by mining Bitcoin, suddenly you can send it wherever you want. It's unrestrictable. There's no sanctions on it. There is no middleman taking a cut. It's fascinating stuff. That's kind of
It
what I
is.
wanted to bring up.
Well, you have 45 points once again, and I will just start with the most recent, which is all the energy FUD. Really, if
Yeah.
anybody has any intellectual capacity whatsoever and does any kind of research whatsoever other than just reading a headline, they'll soon discover that that is just a bunch of malarkey. So, going back all the way to the beginning of what you were talking about at different state level kinds of insanity, just give you some examples. In California, there was a proposal to be able to assess taxes on any California resident up to 10 years after they move out of the state of California. I don't think it made it to even be voted on, but just the fact that it was proposed in our legislature down the street here is insane. And it also lays the floor for that possibility to happen in the future. You know, it's like, hey, we're gonna warm them up to this idea, and then when we actually clobber them with it, it won't hurt so bad. You know, so I think there are some insane type of proposals actually making it pretty high up. Like, to me, that is so ridiculous. It should have been shot down just in the idea phase. Like, that's just one small example of it. I mean, there's a lot of things even in the United States. Wherever you live, I think the U.S. is one of two countries that actually taxes their citizens regardless of where they live in the world, except for one place, which is Puerto Rico. Funny, it's a U.S. territory, but anyway, different story. But so really, we're kind of screwed. So I think this is where Bitcoin comes into the picture. I always say my first step out of California is properly stored Bitcoin. And even better if you had KYC free, properly stored Bitcoin, and there would be no way to trace it back to you, or no way for them to know that was your wallet or your value. That would be the utmost in sovereignty when it came to like leaving with your value, which I hope we never have to do, because I really think that California is a wonderful place. The weather here is amazing. There's so much beautiful scenery, mountains, lakes, volcanoes, rivers. Like, it's incredible. So I would hate to have to concede this place to a bunch of insane folks. But if push came to shove, thank God for Bitcoin, because it would give me the opportunity to be able to actually take value with me when I left. So I definitely am preparing as such, even if it is a remote possibility or whatever. I'm preparing accordingly, and maybe even going a little overboard, because you never know. I was surprised when we started.
Be more prepared. So
Luck
sorry for
favors
cutting in, but
prepared.
I just want to
No,
say you
no,
can never be over prepared. It's
for
better to
sure.
be prepared than unprepared and get
Yeah,
surprised off guard.
yeah. I was shocked when we
Back to you,
started
Loren.
this. Yeah, thanks, buddy. I was shocked before we started this conversation, and you were telling me, like, I was surprised you lived in Russia, and then you were telling me what life in Russia is like. I was genuinely shocked. Like, I've heard different things, but really to hear who's there right now and living life, raising a family and everything, like, it was surprising. I did mention this early on too, which was I lived through all of the 70s, and I was talking to another guy I met at a Bitcoin meetup thing in down south in Santa Monica, and we were saying the same thing, which was it was crazy when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s, thinking that the Russians were, pumping propaganda to their citizens, and through media and the government, blah 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 blah. And it's like roles have reversed. That's where we are now. I mean, that's a point you were making earlier, but it's just crazy to see that. Another point which we talked about earlier was it's actually nice that there are two complete different polar opposites in the world, because if everybody agreed and there was just a one world government, that probably would be one of the best ways to actually be able to obfuscate Bitcoin, to take it over. Yeah, exactly. So it is nice, and we may see the day where there is a flippening of, like, the freedom countries may end up being the ones that adopt Bitcoin in it, and it could very well be countries like China and Russia. This might be 50 plus years into the future, but Bitcoin is truly the freedom technology here, not the oppression of an ever growing government. So it's nice to see countries adopting Bitcoin, and like you said, like when you see countries like Bhutan and whatnot, it kind of, it's similar to like the Jason Lowery thesis, where these countries are in a way battling over resources of Bitcoin. I don't want to say uh, W words or any other words to trigger people, but when people are competing over resources, it which is a fact, it's a fact of life in the animal kingdom and everywhere else. Uh, that is kind of starting, like the things you just said, where it's like we see it now with companies. Actually, when Microsoft put the thing out, hey, we're going to vote on December 10th to see if we're going to throw some Bitcoin on the treasury or not. It'll make other companies wake up and look. Even if they vote no, they'll be just like, did they really just do that? And so people are starting to take note, and we're going to hit a FOMO point where there's going to be no Bitcoin left. None of this go pick the gold nuggets off the bottom of the creek, but instead it'll be, these crazy hash wars and stuff. So it's super exciting time to be alive, and I'm excited for the technology because it really, in my estimation, has the best ability of anything that I can see to actually make positive changes for humanity, to take the money back, to have a solid rails on which capitalism can operate. I think capitalism isn't the problem. I think it is the fact that the money was obfuscated, and now it's manipulated, and now we can't have true free expression of trade and value and whatever, because we're operating on a foundation that's corrupted. So I really am excited for what Bitcoin can do going forward, and to me, it's more than just a conviction. Like I said before, it's an obsession.
Yeah, and as the famous saying in our space goes, fix the money, fix the world.
Right. Yep.
You couldn't have said it better, Loren.
No, I 100% agree with that
So,
saying.
so I wanted to add what you said, kind of, Bitcoin gives you this freedom to just flee if you have to. In my case, I didn't have to. It was my choice to live a
Right.
more freer life. I didn't like the regulations and everything that was happening. And
Yeah.
personally, I've been living more or less on a Bitcoin standard for several, I would say from like 2020. Bitcoin
Wow.
standard, meaning all my wealth is in Bitcoin. Like, I don't mean going to the grocery and buying bananas with Bitcoin, but like all the savings were in Bitcoin, and stacking like super hard every month, 10 to 20%, if not more, would go straight into DCA and cold storage. And then when the time came when we were sick of the system, we literally sold off the remaining, the car, the everything, put it in a nice ledger, boarded the plane, flew over to a country which is essentially sanctioned from the economic system, and and it's easy as. And then tomorrow, if you never know what's going to happen, God forbid, but you said the W word, if shit really goes down and we get a third episode and we need to flee again, I don't have to worry about selling my real estate, selling everything. It's just pack up, get on a plane, get on a train, get on a car, and just move out to the next part. And we've never had that in human history, where you can just take all of your wealth that nobody can confiscate, unless you're a total idiot and you have your seed phrase pinned on your wall, and just just get away from it, which is very powerful stuff. And
it is very
one
powerful.
thing is people saying hypothetically, and another thing is living it. Like, I've lived it myself, and I know a lot of other people that have left like really bad, like inflationary environments from the Turkeys and Lebanon, which were essentially losing everything. They just like switched and just packed up and left. I mean, it's the true sovereignty. Like, I'm currently finishing the Sovereign Individual book. I can't believe I waited so long to read it. And it's just giving me goosebumps that this book is 30 years old, and like everything they're talking about slowly unraveling, and how like I guess Satoshi must have been the biggest fan of the Sovereign Individual book, because like the stuff that they lay out is just like it's blueprint towards Bitcoin. And now with Bitcoin, you're like, reading that book 30 years ago, it'd be like, oh, it'd be nice to have this magic internet money. But now you have it, and it's like it's accessible at your fingertips. And as you said, these gold nuggets, like, it's not going to be that easy to get it forever, like Bitcoin is just, at some point, I truly believe this Samson Mao says, the Omega candles are going to start popping in, where Bitcoin's going to be going not 10K a day jump. It's going to be like 100K jump a day. And you'll be like, what was I doing all this time? Distracted on my Netflix latest, docu-series, where you could have been stacking super hard and saving yourself your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. Like I tell a lot of people, getting to 1 Bitcoin is good, but just have an aim first to get to like 10 million sats. Like 0.1 of a Bitcoin in the future will be like, holy shit, like you have 10 million sats. Like it's a lot of money. Like don't get boggled down by having a full. Of course, if you get to a full, that's like you've made it basically. And especially if you hold it for long enough, you're set. But it just gives you this like control back into your hands, and that's why I'm so bullish about it, because
For sure.
living it through my life and having this choice, it does wonders. And just to close it up, and maybe I've been talking a lot about Russia, but just to give another selling point, don't worry guys, I'm not funded by the Russian government. Putin does not pay me any rubles for this, but just to tell you about 100%. Well, I guess you gotta trust me, like in the legacy market, you can't verify it, but no, jokes aside, like the on-ramp and off-ramp here is so much easier than it is in Europe, which was another surprising fact to myself, where you have like, there's tens, if not hundreds of exchanges where you can essentially, it's OTC free, KYC free, apart from giving an email and a number. But if you want, you can just get a spoof number and just a spoof email, and it goes straight into your card. Or you can even get cash deliveries. How you have Uber Eats, you can have cash delivery to your house, KYC free, which is like mind blowing. Now, of course, that's not going to happen in Europe because they have AML laws and anti-terrorist funding and all these things, which is like, what are you talking about? Like, why do I need to go through all those things? So I'll stop shilling Russia. I mean, it's not daisies here, everything as well. We're suffering from inflation as well. But like, I mean, if you're making an earning in US dollars still today, and you live, here, you can live a very comfortable life. So it's down to Bitcoin, again, giving you a freedom. Where do you want to live? Where do you want to raise your family? Where do you, want to give back and enjoy your time? Because once again, time is super limited, and I'm sure Loren, you can stand by it. Like life goes super fast, and the older you get, I'm seeing this with my kids. I'm only in my early 30s, but like with the kids, it's like, holy shit, like every year they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's just like, where's time going? And I don't want to be living this life where I get to like my 40s, 50s and be like, where did I go wrong? Like, why didn't I just stick to that Bitcoin thing? Like maybe life would have been better no matter what offer I get for the fiat mine. I made my goal. Like I'm getting out of this shit. It's just a matter of time, and I gotta be responsible. I'm not a one man show, even though this show is a one man show. But in my private life, I'm one guy with 3 beautiful girls to take care of. So they're my number one priority. So I gotta do what I gotta do now.
For sure.
But at some point, you need to take that leap, and Bitcoin is the only thing that will give me that leap.
For sure.
S&P 500 is not going to give me that choice. As much as I don't want to down talk MicroStrategy. You can see it's late on my end. MicroStrategy, hate it or not, but like for all I know, what if they go flop tomorrow? Then all my wealth is gone. Bitcoin is really the only thing that will forever be in my control, and that's the most purchased thing, and that's what gives it its value. Going back to Austrian, economics. And I never heard of Austrian economics before Bitcoin. Like I think most Bitcoiners haven't. The value is really what you believe the value is. It's not this, fake price tag on the thing, because at the end, it's all about what you agree to pay for it. And it's always been like that since going back to the beginning of money, when we exchanged shells and barter, it was all negotiations. And I think these negotiations with Bitcoin, no matter what the price chart tells you or where the RSI is, we're crossing 200 moving average, forget that bonanza. That's fiat mindset. This is going up forever, Laura, and you better start stacking today. So I'll finish my rant on that one.
No, I'll chime in and just say right out of the gate that I subscribe to Samson Mao's Omega Candle theories. I know a lot of Bitcoiners do not, but I am one that does for sure. You started early in your rant by talking about getting on a plane and being able to opt out of places like that. But this is something that I really haven't heard much in the community, which is actually living in a regime that is quite oppressive in a lot of ways is actually easier when you do have Bitcoin as well. California, the state I live, is they want to tax you on everything. I've seen instances with friends and family where they've went in and actually grabbed stuff out of their money out of their bank account if certain things weren't paid, if they won some sort of injunction against them, if you can lose your property here to seizure, you can, like, there's just so many ways that a government entity could go in and actually take your value. So even if you said, no, I'm not going to do this, if you have anything, they can grab it. So it's one of the reasons that I don't ever want to buy a house here until things change. I don't want to have too big of a bank account in fiat terms. But if I live here, I can do so under the radar and in a gray area where I can keep most of my value properly stored in cold storage. And I can, if I need to, I can peel some off for certain expenses and whatnot. But they really don't have any way to come after me because they don't. I don't have a house that they can, which is another story here.
Confiscate.
Taxes have, yeah, confiscate. Taxes have gone up a ton. Insurance has gone up a ton. The price of electricity has gone up a ton. So there's a lot of ways that even if they're not going to come and seize your house totally, the state still has access to steal from you by messing with those kinds of rates too. So taxes was huge here. So I really don't want to get into where I'm putting roots down in a state where I feel unstable as far as the overlords go, the people calling the shots in that state. And California happens to be one of those states. I have stepkids in school here, and for sure for the next 4 years, it looks like I'll be firmly planted here because I've got a kid that's loves music and is entrenched in the music program and whatnot, and just has the desire to finish out his schooling there. And so I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But if I'm going to live in this kind of a, I don't know, it's it's trending more tyrannical where it's like the government makes more of the decisions with on your personal life type of events, even when it comes to this is another hot topic as of late of the gender of your children or just insane things where it's just like the government shouldn't be meddling in this kind of business. Like they're not just stealing your value when it comes to finances. They're actually meddling in
Stealing
areas
your
that are,
children.
yeah, there's moral issues involved. So there's a lot going on here, and I don't want to ever. I want to be able to emancipate myself in a very short amount of time if I have to just get on a plane like you talked about. But in the meantime, being in a handling your Bitcoin properly so that they even if they knew you had Bitcoin and they weren't able to see that, like you said, if it's not tattooed on your body or whatever your seed words. So I really think it's important, even if you are living in an area like that, Bitcoin can still help you because you can still, as long as you're living properly and not have
Yeah.
avenues they can access your value. It's a huge, huge win for you in that regard as well. So I don't think you hear that enough. You just hear about hey, I'm going to leave here and go somewhere else. So I'm enjoying all the benefits of living in California with the minimal it still impacts you on a daily basis. You still
Footprint.
need to jump through their hoops, but there's
Yeah,
positives for
yeah,
living here too. The weather's amazing and there's a lot of amazing things here. So, but
for sure.
but doing it on a Bitcoin standard is the way to go. And I'm like, it's like I said, the people that own homes here and stuff, like that's just another story. I know there's a ton of Bitcoiners here and a ton down in, like, I live in Northern California. The guys that live down in the fancier areas, you'd call them, where their houses are in the millions. Our average house here is probably, it's under a million, but it's still like high. But they're all the hoops and it's insanity. Like you can do very little with your property without having the governments sign off, and then to do that you still have to go get permits, which cost you money, and it's just an endless array of
And every
red
year you're
tape.
taxed. You're not taxed for your
Yeah,
Bitcoin hodlings, right? You don't get an
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
annual tax on your Bitcoin,
yeah.
which is
So
like
it's making
that's
it,
crazy.
yeah, it's making it really hard for the average Joe, which is the masses, the majority, to actually have any savings, and as such, it almost becomes slavery in a sense, where you're not planning for the future. You're actually just working your ass off for the moment and just trying to pay that next bill. And you
To
mentioned
pay the
credit card
masters.
debt. Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people are actually falling behind in record numbers. You can actually look this data up and it's out there. Look, credit card debt has just continually climbed in our country quarter after quarter, month after month for the last year and a half or something, or maybe even 2 years now. Like I've just lost count, because it's like our national debt. Where is the ceiling? I hear these people like Joe Carlasale, or however you pronounce his last name, talking about like, oh no, we're good. Like, as long as we can pick things up with AI and robotics coming up here, we'll be fine. But it's like, dude, where's the ceiling? Like we're already at a number that makes no sense to the average human brain. I see it vastly different. I think we're already at the point of no control. I think we're locked in this insane death spiral of debt, and I really think the only way out of it is through responsibility and the tool of Bitcoin. So yeah, I went all over the board there too. So I hope you gleaned something out of that ramble.
I like it. No, this
Okay.
this is the ultimate episode of giving to someone who says, "Why Bitcoin, man?"
Yeah, we're
Like,
just
listen to
over
this
the
1.5 hour round with Loren.
hood. Yeah,
No, but I'll just close that off, and then I've got a kind of as a roundup closing
sure.
question. But I wanted to just share one factor which I think is super important to people. A lot of argument is, well, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. The
Mm-hmm.
world cannot sustain on 21 million. And you were talking about the debt problem, which
Right.
I was just reading Marty Bent's article this morning on NOSTR. Shout out to NOSTR, where he wrote that the U.S. national debt level is 30
30.
billion away from 30 billion away from hitting crossing 40 trillion US dollars. And
Oh,
what, just
geez.
next week or next month, the US government is doing their 10-year bond auction for 42 billion. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense. What's that going to cover?
No.
We're talking trillions here. And if we take the
Yeah.
whole world assets of everything, all the money, all the assets, all the real estate, all the gold, all the Ponzi derivative schemes, we're somewhere in the region of plus minus 950 trillion
Mm-hmm.
dollars.
Yeah.
Now, Bitcoin, which most people, especially getting into Bitcoin, they don't realize that one Bitcoin has 100 million satoshis. There's 100 million units, which is like
Mm-hmm.
the big explosion moment when people, think, there's only 100 units, but then you go, it's 100 million. Now,
Right.
if you look at the satoshis, not Bitcoins individually, it's 2.1 quadrillion with a Q, not a T,
Yeah.
quadrillion satoshis. And then, that's what I bring up to people, and when they give me an argument, oh, people cannot sustain of 21 Bitcoin. Well, I think the world could very easily sustain of 2.1 quadrillion satoshis. So this argument of, oh, well, there's not enough, how do we scale more Bitcoin, how do we get more Bitcoin? It's not about how we get more Bitcoin, it's how we get our shit correct, especially the governments spend more wisely on things that should be done, and just doing the right decisions. But as long as it's
Yeah.
all this greed, all this fiat mindset, oh, I'm in this position for the next 4 years, let me steal as much as I can and screw the people, I'll go out on TV and say good things, but secretly at the back, closed doors, I'm doing business deals. We're not going to get anywhere. So we need a fundamental shift, and I think Bitcoin is going to bring that in, because as we said, Loren, you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And it's only a matter of time until people, younger generations, get into these powerful positions, and they already are fully orange pilled, and they say, screw the old playbook, this is the new playbook, this is how we're going to do it, and that's how we change the world. But that takes time. As the saying goes, Rome was not built in a week. And Bitcoin, as if we zoom out the macro, 16 years, we just celebrated on Halloween, what it was just not even a week ago, 6 days ago. It was the 16th birthday of the white paper, not even the Genesis block, but just the white paper. In 16 years, what was achieved is fucking mind-boggling. And then people are like, oh, well, Bitcoin doesn't really have any hope. It's like, man, look what it's done for like 15, 16 years. Imagine the next 5, 10, 15 years. Like, and it's already today, 16 years later, it's the 7th or 6th largest, it's got the largest market cap as an asset class. So it leaped all the fiat currencies apart from the big boys, of course, the USD, the Japanese yen. I think it even beat the pound, the Chinese yen. I don't know. There's a few others, but like it's already in the top 10 in 15 years. Like, we are onto something. Like, this is your opportunity of not even the generation of humanity time. And if you don't act on it, you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Yeah,
And with that, I
100%.
transition to the closing question.
Okay.
What advice would you give to someone who is just starting to explore their Bitcoin journey and looking to learn more about Bitcoin? What do you tell them, Loren? Apart from listening to this podcast, of
Well,
course. I
yeah,
mean,
no,
this
actually,
episode.
that's probably one of the big things. But I would just like to, you know, give you a standing ovation for the last rant right there. It was like you're preaching to the choir, man. Like that was just beautiful. So, having said
Thank you,
that,
man.
yeah, I would say that education is important because it was important to me, and proof of work, which you stated, and in this case, it would be the proof of work to actually go. I can say all these lovely words and have a silver tongue and speak wonderfully about Bitcoin, but I don't want you to listen to me because you just believe me. I don't want you to ride my conviction and my coattails. I want you to go put the work in, and that work would be researching. That work would be spending hundreds of hours listening to podcasts, reading books, studying the current financial system and what it's doing for you, understanding the meaning of money and value. Those are the kinds of things that I would suggest. There's tons of resources now, and I would suggest just putting in the work, because then you will truly develop your own conviction. And when you develop your own conviction, your life will just automatically operate that. You won't be worried about Bitcoin price and fiat, because you'll understand that that is meaningless. You'll just be like, just chill. You'll Bitcoin and chill at that point. So I think putting in the work, to speak to what you said earlier, would be the best advice to somebody who's right at the beginning of the journey. If not, you're gonna sell when things are volatile, you're going to do all the wrong moves, and you're going to have a lot of anxiety. So if you develop a conviction through proof of work, I think you'll be in a good spot.
I think those are wise words from you, Loren. Putting in the work. Nothing in life is just going to happen on its own. You got to put in the work. And I guess with Bitcoin, it goes the same thing. Spend, as Saylor says, 100 hours studying Bitcoin. Not that I'm a big fan of Saylor, but I think that's a really good quote that he says.
Yeah.
Put in the time to it, and take life into your own hands.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. You
So,
go ahead.
Loren, where can we send our listeners to follow you and get in touch and follow your journey?
Is my name down on the bottom? Yeah, in the bottom left corner on my screen, it's Loren HODL. That's actually my handle on X. I also have NOSTR, which is also some Loren HODL. I have a picture of the head of the Bank of International Settlements with a McDonald's hat on and laser
The big
eyes.
boy.
So the big guy, the chunky dude, the big boy himself, the final boss.
You've got him in his
Karsten.
future job,
Yeah,
I see. You're a
right.
man from the future, huh?
I am from the future, so look for that. That is my avatar, and Loren HODL is my handle, at Loren HODL on X.
I can definitely put in a good word. Definitely, I would recommend following Loren HODL on X and Nostr, because you pump out some really good content, very entertaining content as well. So,
I wouldn't say
guys,
that.
go out and well, it's fun in truth, right? Like,
I've
it's
lost a lot of
one man's
followers.
joke is not another man's joke.
Yeah, I've lost a lot of followers because I don't think that I really had a message. I think X was just like a place for me to vent, and maybe like a diary, or just something where it was
Get your thoughts out.
insignificant. Yeah, now I realize that there actually are people that listen, and now I kind of want to be a little bit more discerning and careful at what I put out there, because I realize that there is a message behind it. And I think my big message is just more love and acceptance, because that's the way we're going to grow the network. And that's, we're trying to throw life rafts out to get people out of the ever rising sea of fiat. So in order to do that, I think they'll be more receptive with a little more loving tone to it. That's the big message that I kind of want to try to start putting out there, instead of just slamming people and putting out rude memes and other things. So hopefully I'm going to switch it up going forward.
Well, that way we all win.
Yeah,
Loren,
absolutely.
thanks again for coming on the pod. It's been an
so
absolute
fun.
pleasure.
No, pleasure is all mine. It went by super fast. I mean, when we talk Bitcoin with awesome people like you, it's crazy how fast the time goes, man. So fun.
time pauses. It's like when I
It
go to
does.
conferences, like it feels like
Oh,
there
yeah.
is no time. It's just like time pauses, and it's just like the
Hmm.
day flows, and you walk out,
Yep.
and it's nighttime, and you're like, where
You're
did
like,
it
what
go? Like,
happened? Yeah.
why
Yeah.
is it flying?
Yeah. Yeah. You're with your people, your tribe, man.
Amazing. Well, Loren, once again, thanks again for taking the time to come on the show. And we will love to have you back in the future because our Bitcoin journeys are only getting
For
started.
sure. Yeah.
There will always be interesting things, topics, discussions to have on. So definitely the invitation's always open. If you want to come anytime, feel
Yeah. I
free,
would love to.
how to reach out to me. For sure, I will be inviting you back in the future to come. And until then, stay safe, brother. All the best.
Awesome, man.
And
Likewise.
yeah, I guess enjoy every moment of your life.
Yes, sir. You too. Awesome.